Um, please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. That quote, I picked out quotes for the whole year in this, and it's funny because I had a different talk planned. But then last week, a question was asked in our after service discussion about how to be grateful in the midst of our regular, everyday, maybe tedious, sometimes difficult life. And so I decided to make the talk about that, and the quote just happens to match the talk today. After that question was asked and after we said goodbye to one another, I started thinking about something back in 2002 when my daughter was 12 years old. She was in the 6th grade. And people sometimes call that the age teenagers, and that's what she was. And she went through this phase that I found so difficult to deal with. And so every day I would pick her up from school and she'd get in the car and I'd say something like, "Hi, honey, how was school?" And it seemed as if every day her answers were just a long string of negatives. School was boring. The math test was hard. The school lunch was horrible. And it just seemed to go on every day. And I really grew tired of it. And I wondered, how can I respond to her in a way that validated her feelings, because some of her complaints were valid and deserved to be heard. But how do I respond in a way that doesn't encourage this negativity? And so one day I bought 2 notepads. And after we got home from school and I put out our afternoon snack, we were sitting at the table eating it. And I said, I have this idea that while we're having our snack, let's each take a notepad and we'll write in it our 3 highs of the day, or we'll start out by writing our 3 lows of the day and the bad things that happen. And then we'll write our 3 highs of the day. And she loved that idea and she grabbed a pencil. She was very excited and we began. And when we were done, we each shared our 3 bad things about the day, and then we shared the 3 good things about the day for each of us. And for example, one of her good things was that she had made it into the spelling bee, which opened up a whole conversation. So I could congratulate her and ask her what was the final word that she won on and so forth. And I also commented on the bad things as well, and I commiserated. And then I said, and this was true, that when I was writing, I had a really hard time only writing 3 good things, because as I started to write, I discovered there were so many. And she responded that she felt the same. And so together we decided on the next day that we would write our 3 bad things, our 3 lows, and then we would write as many good things or highs of the day as we felt like writing. And we did that because we both thought it was really fun to recount all the good things. And we started to do that daily. And it started to take so much time writing the good things that I eventually had to set a timer, or we would have spent the whole afternoon just working on that. Our list got longer and longer. So on the first day, she had 3 good things. On the second day, she had 9. On the third day, she had 11. And that led us to talking about how many highs we realize happen during the day that we don't even think about. And we talked about how grateful we were for that. And the nice thing is things did change, and she became her old bubbly self again when I would pick her up in the car. And so after I put together this talk yesterday, I was wondering, do I still have that notebook of highs and lows? So I went down in the basement yesterday and I found my box that says mementos with her name on it. And I was so excited because I found it. It was in there. And it says her name and it says highs and lows. I discovered something that I didn't even know she wrote in it for 2 years. And we didn't even continue that practice the whole time, but she did. And it just warmed my heart to read it again after all these years. And I discovered that my memory was correct. As I said, 3 things, 9 things, 11 things, and it went on. But what was really touching to me was reading what the good things were. What were her highs? Always, of course, there was that she did well in her math test, or as I said, she got onto the spelling bee. But the highs, many of the highs were her things like, I had a cup of cocoa this morning and it was double chocolate. Or I walked around downtown with my mom and we were just taking our time and relaxing. She wrote, my dad came home early from work today. I'm excited about this part in the book that I'm reading right now. I ate an apple that was delicious. It was fresh and juicy and sweet. She had listed all kinds of little things, little moments, long lists of little moments, because our days are filled up with these tiny little things for which we can be so grateful. A juicy apple, or an exciting chapter in the book, or when your loved one comes home. And I don't want to sound too Mary Poppins, but just the fact that we all woke up this morning is a reason to be grateful. For me, Monday mornings are a time to be grateful. In my neighborhood, that's garbage day. And when I walk in the morning, the garbage trucks and the recycling trucks and the compost trucks, they're all out. And I hear them and I see them, and sometimes I have to walk around them. And when I do, I ponder often about these kinds of services and the numbers of people that are required just to take care of our everyday living here in my city where I live of Minneapolis. And it kind of amazes me, and it makes me realize how much I'm taken care of in these ways that are kind of unseen. And so the sound of the garbage truck always makes me feel grateful. But this is not a pep talk on how, or an outline on how we should feel grateful or how to be grateful, because normal everyday life and the difficulties that arise often get in the way of experiencing gratitude, because it hurts and it's hard and it can often feel like a struggle just to be alive or to get through the day. It can feel like a struggle to get through life. But it's in the practice of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism that we find gratitude. It's said that Jodo Shinshu Buddhism is the religion of thank you. Shinran taught that the historical Buddha Shakyamuni appeared in the world in order to reveal the vow of the Amida Buddha. And so when we consider, one, the reality that the Shakyamuni taught, that life does contain suffering and we suffer when we don't accept this reality. And two, when we also consider the enormity of the gift of the Amida Buddha, which was to save all beings, there's nothing to be but thankful. When we accept the reality of life, and when we embrace the truth that we are accepted just as we are in our human, ego-driven, self-focused way of being in the world, we then have a deep knowing that no matter what, we are safe and we can feel free and we can then be thankful. Professor Jeff Wilson is a Shin Buddhist, and he writes in his book, Buddhism of the Heart, that in our normal, unenlightened life, it's as if we're stumbling around in the dark, bumping into furniture, tripping and faltering. We say, ow, why is that couch in the way? And who put that chair there anyway? Because life is difficult, it's full of responsibility, it can be a daily grind, it might feel joyless, and we can become so caught up in it all. We make many missteps and then we live with multiple regrets because we do stumble and we bump into things. But when we turn on the light, the room is still the same. The couch is still there. The chair is in the same place, but we're no longer bumping into them. We're no longer confused or angry because we see it all there in the room that is filled with light. We can move through the room more easily, even though those obstacles are still there. That's how it is for us as Shin Buddhists. Sorrows, difficulties, our own self-centeredness and preoccupations, the day-to-day of life, it's all still there. But we have awakened to the compassion of the Amida Buddha. The light has been turned on, and we can respond to the light and the embrace of the Amida Buddha. And then we discover that this messy life is actually pretty good, because we realize that we do have all we need. And we can even see the gift in that bumping into the couch or falling over the chair. And Wilson says that in this discovery is the light that illuminates all. We understand that our difficulties, our passions, our very human limitations are actually great teachers. They open us to truth and wisdom so we can say thank you for these gifts and live in gratitude. It is in the working of the Nembutsu, the Namo Amida Butsu, that opens the path or helps us to begin on the path to a life of gratitude. For when we recite Namo Amida Butsu, we do begin to feel a sense of gratitude and ultimately to truly embody a life of gratitude. We say it and we eventually live it, because we have already received the gift of the Amida Buddha. This begins, according to Reverend Dr. Taetso Uno. He was a scholar, author, and lecturer on Shin Buddhism. This begins with deep hearing of the name that calls, the Namo Amida Butsu. And with this deep hearing, we become liberated, and our problems, our day-to-day living all become sources of, he says, self-knowledge and received wisdom, for which gratitude will eventually arise, and then we eventually find ourselves living this life of gratitude. He says that gratitude becomes incorporated in us gradually through the working of the Nembutsu. We do this by becoming open and receptive to the teaching of the Nembutsu path and all that may come in our lives. We open ourselves to it. And eventually, an awareness arises that there is a message in your own life in this teaching. According to Reverend Dr. Uno, in this awareness, we become more and more aware or cognizant of us and the world, in our and the world's egocentricity and blind compassions, while also seeing the light of compassion and true reality. And with that increasing awareness, deep and penetrating hearing of the call of the Nembutsu arises within our hearts, and we hear, we perceive in the very depths of our being the immense and boundless compassion and profound wisdom contained within the vow and the Nembutsu. And truly experiencing this leads us to gratitude, a life of gratitude where we welcome and accept every day, every moment, no matter what they bring, as opportunities for learning, for opening, for receiving. I'm sure many of you have heard the story from China of the farmer who went to a market and bought a beautiful and strong horse. But I'm going to tell it again. He purchased it for a very good price. And as he galloped home, he thought about what a gift the horse is to his family. The horse would come in handy for plowing, and they could ride it and travel faster. They would no longer have to walk to the market to sell their goods. It was truly a gift, and he felt incredibly grateful. And then the next day, the farmer's son went for a ride on the horse, and he fell off and he broke his leg. A doctor had to be called, and that was a great expense. It was painful for the son, and because he was unable to use his leg, the farmer was now short-handed. That horse was not a gift at all, and so the farmer cursed his bad luck. But then the following day, the officers from the emperor's army arrived, and they went from house to house, demanding every single able-bodied young man was to follow immediately, for the country was at war. And the farmer's son was spared because of his leg, which meant that the horse was a gift after all. And the farmer was grateful once again for the gift. Sometimes it is very hard to see the gift. It is very hard to be grateful, especially in difficult moments. Sometimes, especially if you've been hurt by someone, or if someone has done you wrong, or if you feel you've been mistreated. It's those times when we can simply let go of the need to understand in the moment, because it all takes time. The poet Mary Oliver once wrote a poem that means so much to me. It goes, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." So what about gratitude when things are really painful, hurtful, not just everyday living, but the times of deep grief and unbearable loss, times of profound confusion, when everything seems so dark, perhaps feels as if the suffering will never end? Do we feel grateful when someone we love dies suddenly? Or when we're suffering from a medical condition or a treatment that is grueling? What is there to be grateful for then? I know that each one of us does carry sorrow, and we have all suffered losses, whether the loss of loved ones or the loss of our hopes and dreams, the loss of our youth. Sometimes we are stumbling in the dark during times of deep sorrow and tremendous loss, maybe serious worries about the future. And it may be almost impossible to experience gratitude or to see the learning or the gift of it. And we might even feel like a failure because we just cannot muster up thankfulness at all. And of course we don't, because we're human. So don't even try. In fact, it's never about trying to. The understanding will unfold someday, and the knowing will reveal itself. Maybe even some gifts that appeared or arose during such a dark period will be shown someday. But there's no need even to try or to feel bad because you don't feel grateful when it is a time that is so very trying. Sometimes all we can do is to simply rest in what we know, and that is the compassion of the Amida. We can be held in the arms of the Amida Buddha, knowing that we don't see the whole picture, but that we do know we are being held right this very moment in deep compassion, knowing that we will eventually love life again. And for that, we can be grateful. Please join me again in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu.